Bobo's on the job. A short story by Paul McCann. Business was slow in the village from time to time, and in the quiet times there were always sales and giveaway prizes to help businesses along. Some shop owners hired men and women to dress up in strange outfits, and some others placed flashing signs and window dressers. Bobo was one of those people who could turn his hand to anything and could see the need out there and the possibility of making some money in the process. So he proposed to do a few of the shop owners in town a favour that their business could use some signs maybe out the front. The idea was to use the element of surprise tactics. Bobo explained that placing a sign on the front windows might pay dividends. He made the point that there was always regular passing parade there and that he could design and paint some interesting messages on the windows, and it might just attract the custom that they needed. So because Bobo worked at a very modest fee, he got the job as a community sign writer and advertising specialist. With 6 shops to do, immediately Bobo was going to need some help. Bobo went to look for Charlie, who was always glad to help Bobo. Didn't take long to find him. There was Charlie, walking like a cat along the top of the school wall. Bobo crept up quietly, without Charlie seeing him, and said in a strange, eerie voice, "Oh, please, Charlie, don't fall. I'm the ghost of the old school wall." Charlie screamed and he leapt about 3 feet in the air and down on the ground and right in front of Bobo, who grabbed him tightly and said, "Now I got you, Charlie." "Ah, Jesus, Bobo, you scared the blanket daylights out of me," Charlie screamed. Bobo said, "Don't tell me you're one of those who believe all those stories about the old ghost in the school wall, are you, Charlie?" Charlie went white and his bottom lip began to quiver. He looked into Bobo's face and said, "What ghost?" Bobo tried to keep a straight face and said, "You mean you don't know about the ghost of the old school wall?" Charlie, who was really worried now, he said, "But no." Bobo gave him a slap in the back and laughed, and he said, "Charlie, come on and wise up. We got some painting to do." They made their way to Charlie's hardware shop at Christie's Corner and picked up some of the painting supplies. Then Bobo put Charlie to work cleaning each of the shop windows, while he put together some signs with a set of colour arrangements for each of the 6 shops on the front of the road. The opticians, the bakers, the photographers, the bank, the tackle and bait shop and the music store. They all wanted something on their window to attract some custom. The first thing to be done was to clean all of the shop windows. Charlie continued to rant and rave as usual, taking a mile in a minute to talk about the things he had nothing to do with at all, with the job at hand even. Do you think Mrs. Fagan's got a problem, Bobo? She always tells me to stop picking the leaves off her tree. It's not even me who does it, and it's not her tree anyway. I used to belong to Mickey, that tree who lives next door to Skeeter's uncle. Mickey, I remember the night Spider dug that tree out of one garden and put it in next door. She put it in Mrs. Fagan's garden, and when Mrs. Fagan got up the next morning, she told everybody it's always been there." Bobo just smiled and he said, "Don't worry, Charlie. The next time you see her, tell her you'll stick the leaves back on for her in the spring, okay?" Charlie seemed happy with that, and taking a deep breath, he said, "Oh, okay, right then. I'll tell you another thing, Bobo. Do you know Tiddles, the milkman's cat? Well, she got killed crossing the road the other day. It got hit by another milk truck, and when he tried to stop, hundreds of milk bottles fell off the truck and smashed all over the street." "Well, there's no use crying over spilt milk, Charlie," said Bobo, who stopped and asked for a bucket of soapy water from Mrs. Muldoon, who lived in the corner house, and then They were on. Bobo turned to Charlie and handed over the bucket of water and chamois, and he said, Charlie, now come on, take this and clean all the glass of the windows of the shops on this list. And then dry them with the chamois cloth, okay? I'll be back as soon as I have written the messages and the ideas I have in my head. And we'll do all the signs. Before Charlie had the chance to ask questions, Bobo was off like a flash towards the club. After a while, Bobo returned to the front of the road to find Charlie washing every single shop window on the street. Bobo stood there for a moment, and he watched Charlie furiously at work, inspecting the glass up and down and side to side and wiping the chamois cloth all over and now and then. What the heck are you doing, Charlie? Said Bobo. I'm cleaning the shop windows like you asked me to, Charlie replied. Like that's a very good idea, Charlie, but I never asked you to do the entire road, Bobo said. I know, but when I cleaned the ones you asked me to do, all the other ones looked so dirty. I just had to clean them. Don't you think it looks good? Said Charlie. Oh, sure, Charlie. They look great, Bobo said, not wanting to say the wrong thing. Then he handed Charlie 3 pieces of cardboard with the signs for the optician's job, the baker's, and the tackle and bait shop. And then he slowly said, Charlie, copy what I have written on these bits of cardboard on to the front window of each shop. Use these colours I've set out. I'm going off to begin painting the windows of the music store, the photographers and the bank. If you've got any problem, just come and see me. Okay, Charlie? Charlie nodded his head and started to look at each of the job cards, one after the other. Charlie's signs were small and simple. All he had to do was to use the stencil and write down the 3 messages on the 3 windows. Bobo had put a lot of thought into the signs. The photographer's sign said, Have your families and loved ones shot and hung by a professional. The bank sign said, Hi-ho silver, some will, some won't, some do, some don't, we might. It won't hurt to ask the man with the mask, come see the Lone Ranger. The novelty sign for the music store said, If you've come and I was gone, then I may have gone shopping, but I'll be back in a minute. Bobo's sign for the opticians would cover the entire window in giant letters. There'd be one word, optometrists, and then underneath that big word, in very small letters, would be a message that said, Special notice. If you have stopped and took notice of this notice, then you will probably notice that this notice isn't worth noticing. But if you do notice the small print here on the window, then you'll notice that you didn't take any notice of this notice. Otherwise, why don't you come inside and have your eyes checked for free? The baker's sign would simply read, Did you smell our lovely buns? The last shop window sign out the front of the bait and tackle shop said, Our worms are so alive, they'll make you wriggle. Eventually, Bobo had finished his 3 jobs and took a step back to have a look. People gathered round and took notice of the new signs. The shopkeepers were very pleased with the work and paid Bobo for his time. But further on up the road, there was a large crowd around the shops that Charlie had done. Bobo could hardly believe his eyes when he looked at the 3 shop windows. Instead of putting the sign at the optometrists, Charlie had put optimists. No wonder the sign was drawing in people's attention. Not only did he get the spelling wrong for the opticians, but somehow Charlie had got the other two shops mixed up. The bait and tackle shop had a sign that read, "Did you smell our lovely bums? B-U-M-S." And the baker's shop had a sign that said, "Our worms are so alive they'll make you wriggle." Bobo looked at Charlie, who stood posing for some photos. He looked over and caught his eye and motioned him to come over. Charlie looked so proud and he said, "Isn't it great, Bobo? Look, those nice people wanted to take pictures of me in front of all the signs I did." "Jesus, Charlie, what have you done?" said Bobo. Yeah, I know. Aren't I great, Bobo?" replied Charlie. "Charlie, you're missing the point. It's all a big blinking mess. You've got the baker sign on the bait and tackle shop and you've misspelled buns. It's not bums, Charlie. It's buns. Lovely buns, Charlie. Not bloody bums, Charlie. It's bloody buns." Charlie smiled for a minute, and then the smile ran away from his face and his bottom lip started to quiver and he went red in the face, almost lost for words. Charlie said, "Oh, do you think people will notice?" Bobo said, "Oh, no, Charlie. Nobody will notice. That's if they're blind. Only if they're blind and half as daft as you, Charlie. Look at the baker's window. If people see that we're dead meat, look at it, Charlie. Our worms are like so alive, they'll make you wriggle. Good God, Charlie, quick, clean everything you did off the window." I'll clean it all off, Bobo," replied Charlie. "Every last word, Charlie," said Bobo. "With what?" said Charlie. "Pink paint, Charlie," Bobo said. "Okay, I'll just go get some, Bobo." Bobo was stunned that Charlie was as thick as that, but then he thought that he was inspired by what he just said. If he painted pink paint over what Charlie had done, it might be a nice background to his message that he could scroll over the top of the pink paint. So in the end, it all worked out like magic. Everybody was happy. Bobo and Charlie got paid, and with the success of new custom, all the other shopkeepers wanted their windows done as well. That's the end of the story.